What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of At Home with Mark. Today is season 8. I have to look down, Aaron, because it's like there's so many now. Season 8, episode 12, and you are the 170th episode, my friend.
That's crazy.
Right?
Congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
I know.
amazing.
This is nuts. So this is Aaron from Dominion Electric. If you follow my YouTube or Instagram, you know that I love his stuff. He makes amazing fuzz pedals. I'm a huge fuzz nerd, as is Aaron. We're going to get into all that stuff. But how are you, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Busy.
Good.
Really busy. But yeah, we're hanging in there. We're making pedals. We're trying to work on some new stuff. You know, we're keeping busy. That's about how I'd say it.
Okay. So since this is your second time on the show, if you guys want to learn more about Aaron's past and like we got into like a bunch of, get to know Aaron and why he does what he does, go back and watch that episode. That was super fun. That was actually, I remember that chat fondly because we got into like old school, like high school band stuff and you talking about the demos that you guys cut and all that.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. So go back and check that out. But I have a bunch of questions here that I thought this would be fun to like educate the people about fuzz and why you do what you do. So like, first of all, tell me like why fuzz? Like why are you so drawn to that specific thing?
Um, to be honest with you, I don't know. Like, I can't think of like a specific moment. Um, and it's not like I've loved it since I was 10 years old, right? And then I've just been like dying to do it ever since. Um, if you go back and you watch the other podcasts and you think about my past, like I grew up playing in punk rock, hardcore type bands and stuff like this. And like the fuzz didn't show up, right? Like it wasn't a tool that was used. So it wasn't something that I had really been experimenting with at that time. Um, there was somewhere down the line where I started. I was always into Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, like guitar player. You listen to that stuff. I was always big into that. Um, but somewhere around my I don't know, like early mid 20s, um, I started really diving deeper into that stuff, and I think that's when like the fuzz face kind of came into play, right? It was like you can't listen to Jimi Hendrix and not hear fuzz face. Um, and so I started kind of getting obsessed with that sound. Maybe it's that it was different than what I was used to, like high gain amps and distortion and whatnot. It was a whole new world. So I was sitting at home playing more blues stuff, Stratocasters, Fender amps type based music, and then was really getting into that, oh man, how do I make my amp sound like it's about to explode
Yeah.
type vibe. And the funny thing about it too is that someone, I can't remember who it was to be honest, but very early on someone clued me into the whole like guitar volume pot interaction thing that exists with the fuzz face. um, it's funny because it seems like that's all anybody asks me about these days is like how does it clean up and what's the interaction like and whatnot. And I often will joke with them a little bit where I'll be like, it's always been there. I think it's like it's used as a bit of a marketing pitch these days where everybody talks about the like cleanup functionality of the fuzz face, but it really is like the worst kept secret, right? Like it's been there for the last 60 years. But everybody at some point gets introduced to it. And when you do, you're like, oh my goodness, like there's so much in this type of circuit or pedal. Um, and I think that's where it kind of really started for me. And so then I started listening to like all these old recordings and bootlegs and instances where you start hearing it and you start paying attention to like, oh, he's using the fuzz face, but like what year is it, what type of fuzz face would it be? um, and just a quick side story on that, the like one of my favorite things that you can go and listen to, speaking of Hendrix, is I believe it's the Winterland recordings. If you go and listen to him play Spanish Castle Magic,
Oh,
you can tell that he is only just gotten some form of silicon fuzz face. Like they've obviously transitioned over from germanium to silicon. Um, and most people will know that if you play a silicon fuzz face like pinned with both volume and fuzz, you get like squealy oscillation. It just is inherent because of the amount of gain in the transistors. Um, and it's really cool if you listen to that particular bootleg when he's playing that song. It's like he hasn't figured that out yet, and so when he plays his like dun 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 dun, you can hear it like squeal in between all those points, and so you start really cluing into like, wait, what the hell is all that noise? And you're like, oh man, he's using silicon fuzz face. He like doesn't know that you can't just crank it yet, and so
Mm.
like he's only just starting to figure it out, and so you kind of start, I don't know, like discovering this strange underground uh like you build this repertoire of all these old fuzz face or fuzz type sounds, and then you start diving deep into it. So that's a long-winded answer to say that like I kind of fell in love with it, and then it became this obsession, right? It was
Mhm.
always like that pedal. Not to say that there wasn't other stuff. Like I'm definitely into other things, but I don't know. Everything I loved, I was rooted back in that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Let's talk about the whole silicon thing. So at the time when Hendrix, like when you listened to that and you heard that and you identified it, would that have been like the first time they started using silicon transistors at that time in history?
Like probably, right? Like it's really hard to say. I'd need to go back and really check the specific dates of like that recording and whatnot. But what we know, right, is Dallas Arbiter, the Fuzz Face, Germanium, all the way up until about 1968, 69. Like that, all the Fuzz Face stuff is like transitions, right? I always like to think of the between years, like 66, 67, 67, 68. So 68, 69 is a really funky period where Arbiter sort of, like becomes Dallas Arbiter, and then they're transitioning from germanium to silicon, and you see a whole bunch of like funky stuff happening in like old fuzz faces. I've owned probably, a dozen of them, and you see strange things happening where like there's certain parts and certain ones, and they're doing the Leo Fender thing. You can tell where they're kind of just reaching into their bucket of parts and throwing them together. Um, and the interesting thing to me, especially about the silicon fuzz face, is it's almost like they didn't consider that the new transistors like would require like a change in bias. And so
Mm.
when you look at the old ones, the schematic doesn't really change. Like one part that kind of affects the output volume changes, but the main resistor that dictates the bias of the second transistor, the one that everybody sort of manipulates these days, they left it at 8.2K, which would normally put a germanium fuzz face in a good spot. It's almost like they didn't consider it, and they basically said, here's the substitute for germanium, so let's throw them in.
Mhm.
And as a result, most old silicon fuzz faces that you pick up tend to be under biased or biased kind of cold,
Mm.
because there's almost like too much resistance because they didn't change that resistor. Um, I believe the first person I saw talking about it was Dave Fox, who made like Fox Rocks um, pedals and stuff. When he was working with Crest Audio, the like 90s era fuzz faces, he was one of the first guys that I saw where he was like, I don't know what the hell they were doing. They should have changed this part from an 8.2 to a 6.2K, and it just puts the transistors right in the right spot again, and then it just livens them up, right?
Mhm.
So there's a reason why like old silicon fuzz faces can sound a little bit more like spitty and gnarly, and it's because they naturally are sitting there based on them like not adjusting the component values in the schematic. Um, you start seeing like funky stuff, right? But that's part of the like you'll hear me talk about it a lot. It's part of the romance um, of history, right? Like people are borderline stumbling their way through it, and you kind of have cool things happen because of it, right? I mean, like fuzz in general, I think we all know the story by now, is like a fortunate accident where the console is, broken on whatever that recording was. um, and then it just led to people trying to say, wait, let's try and recreate this.
Mhm, mhm.
Um,
I wonder, do you know of any, like, contemporary players that play those old Silicon Fuzz faces that we
I
would, like
like, I mean, I know plenty of people that play them, right? Like, I mean, I'll shout out a buddy of mine, like Philip Sace, has toured with his old BC 183 fuzz face. Um, but it's one of those things of like, I don't know with respect to that one in particular whether it's been like adjusted or fixed.
Mhm,
But in my experience, a lot of them can use a little bit of, I don't know, like massaging to get them into a spot that's a little bit better because, like, I mean, I have, a couple of them in a cabinet over there. And while it's cool to have the old one and you might not want to go ahead and, like, change the old parts that are in it, um, some of them aren't, like, from what I hear, particularly like usable. They're pretty raw sounding,
right, okay.
right?
Did
To
we have
somebody that might be awesome, but
Yeah, I mean, I like my favorite thing with fuzz is that, like, Velcro-y, spitty thing,
yeah,
um, and it's cool, like, having your fuzz and having Chris's fuzz now, like, one's germanium, one's silicon, they're very different
oh,
flavors,
totally.
and it's cool because it's like I never and when we talked, like, I've never had a germanium fuzz. I had a friend bring over, like, one of the Sunface fuzzes, like the Analog Man, and I didn't like it for some reason. But then when I plugged into yours, I loved it. So I'm like, I don't
It's so like, I, I think I think a lot of people make like a huge deal out of the like transistor types and that stuff. And like, don't get me wrong, it absolutely does make a difference, right? Like every transistor kind of imparts its own character. They are unique in their own way. But I'm the first person to say that like the builder themselves almost kind of like trumps like the differences that the transistors make. Um,
Mhm,
as in, like, we all have our own voice. Like we all like a certain thing, right? Like when I'm sitting here trying to like pick the right parts to put a pedal together, I have a sound in my head that I think sounds good, right?
mhm,
And Chris has a sound in his head that he thinks sounds good, and whatever other builder, right? And so a lot of the times it's very much like our thumbprint that's on the circuit as a whole that you're hearing.
mhm.
Um, and a quick anecdote to that is when I originally released the very original like Dominion fuzz that had the switchable germanium silicon circuits in it. Um, the idea was like, here's everything in one package. Like you can have one of the two variants that everybody wants. um, and the number one thing that I heard from people that when they got it was like, man, the like germanium and the silicon side sound really similar to me. Like I was expecting this like
Mm,
big dramatic difference. um, and it's one of those things where I'd often guide them. I'm like, look, you can like under bias one side and over bias another one and like kind of tweak them a little bit so that they are a bit different. But ultimately, like it's my voice going into like each respective side. So it almost would have been a cooler idea to have like, I don't know, you when you do one of these fun like collab type ideas where it would be like, this is Curtis's side and this is Aaron's side. Like
right.
you would probably get something that varied a little bit more because
Mhm.
I instinctively like gravitate to a certain thing, right? Like I'm not going to put something out that I'm like, ooh, I don't like the sound of that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so like that's the beauty of it though, is that like as there's room for everybody within the space.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and that's why people are like always like buying and selling them. And I'm the first person to be like, hey, if I see somebody buy a pedal and then 10 days later I see that they're selling it for whatever reason, like it doesn't really hurt my feelings because like I know how the game is played.
Right.
And like you never really know until you get it in hand. It's a sound thing, it's a feel thing, right? Like a lot of fuzz, like the way that it's compressing.
Mhm.
um, and with pedal building this day and age, unfortunately, like while you guys, all YouTubers and stuff, do an amazing job doing demos, it's the sound of Mark Hopkins, right? Or if it's the sound of
Mhm.
Pete Thorne or whoever that's playing it,
Right.
It never really exactly translates to like what it will sound like if I get the pedal in my hands and I decide to play it. And so it really is like an exploratory journey that you kind of have to go on.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think that, and there's a lot of people who are so scared of fuzz, and I am first at the line, and you would be too, I know, to be like, dude, don't be scared of fuzz. Like there's ways to tame it and ways to smooth out the stuff that maybe you feel doesn't sit in a mix on the bandstand. Whether that's stacking like a boost pedal with it or an overdrive with it, just like Doyle Bramhall would do. That's how Doyle gets those amazing fuzz tones. But I think more and more people are starting to like, oh, I'm interested now because all these other people are talking about it. And I think it's something that's been swimming under the radar because you didn't hear, like when I was growing up, where I heard fuzz was probably Billy Corgan. And
Yeah.
that's not my idea of what I want to listen to with fuzz necessarily. Like I love the Smashing Pumpkins and I love listening to Billy stomp on like an old op amp,
Yeah.
fuzz, big muff kind of thing. But for me, like it took me getting into understanding like how Jimmy used it. Like when I was in Boston, living in Boston, when I was gigging, dude, all I had was a Fender Twin, a 1971 Fender Twin. I had 2 tubes popped out. I had a normal off the rack Dunlop fuzz face, and I plugged into that, and that's all I used all night. And I rolled my volume back.
That's crazy. Did you
That's all I
find it
did.
like super bright?
No, because I feel like the amp I made darker.
Gotcha.
I like kind of lean more towards darker amps or darker sounds, I should say. But no, I never had a problem with it. The van was like basically a power trio with a 2 horn section. So, it wasn't there wasn't keyboards or anything else going on. So I kind of had to fill that little
Yeah.
range. Um, but now, if I think back, like I wouldn't want to do that now because I think I have too many other fun toys I want to bring. But like at the time, I was like, man, this maybe is all you need for,
It's such a funny, like a lot of guys, I like, I swear I act as like fuzz coach as much as I do like pedal builder.
hmm
Um, I've had a lot of interesting conversations recently where like we live in this day and age where like the next best thing is right around the corner, like always, right? Um, and the thing is especially with something like a fuzz pedal, is it's such like an organic thing that like you almost have to bond with it, right? Like,
yeah.
and so you often get people that will buy one, they're all excited, they plug it in and they fire it on right away. And if they don't get what they think that they should be getting in the first, 2 minutes of playing it, they decide, oh, no, like this isn't for me. Off, I'm going to keep it all in perfect condition. I'm going to put it back in its box and like on to the next thing.
hmm
And I often tell people, I'm like, man, like you got to give it time. Like you've got to learn it. You've got to learn what each of you like. You've got to like take it out to dinner a couple times. You have to like really understand like how it works. And I often tell people to kind of embrace their inner Jimmy, where like Jimi Hendrix playing Fuzz Faces, like that's what there was,
hmm
right? And so for him, he's like, oh, I've got this cool thing. It's not like that there's 100 of them sitting on a shelf somewhere. I mean, like there's lots of Fuzz Faces, but like you can see again, just going right back to that example of him playing with the squealing and whatnot. He obviously like took the time to be like, I'm gonna make this work. Like I'm gonna figure it out.
hmm
Um, and once you really like give it time and learn how to work with it and learn what it likes and what it doesn't like, you start finding yourself in this place where you're like, man, I can't be without this thing now. Like I understand it and it understands me, and we kind of know how to play with it properly.
hmm
Um, Again, it's exploratory. You need to really just like give it some time, try it different situations, try it different ways, experiment, see what you like, what you don't like. Um, People often like ask me questions all the time about like the golden rules of like where do I place it in my signal chain and like how do I run it and blah blah blah. Um, and I'll often say like I can tell you what I like to do, but there's also no rules, right? I mean,
hmm
like I'll be the first person to be like place it first in the chain, but like Eric Johnson, he's not too bad. um, will place a tube screamer before it. Like,
Really? I didn't know that.
I mean, conventionally, that's wrong,
Right.
right? But like, I mean, he don't sound too shabby. So like,
Yeah.
it, you have to experiment. You have to try things. You have to not be scared.
Mhm.
Um, we live in this strange age where like a classic example is like somebody might have a fuzz face and a univibe,
Mhm.
and they'll ask what goes first, the fuzz or the vibe, and it's like there is no right answer. Like it's cool either way. It's different,
Mhm.
but like one is not better than the other. And I almost feel like people are like scared. Like it's two pedals. Unplug it, try it one way,
Right?
unplug it and try it the other, and see what you like. But people almost seem like scared to do that. They'll resort to like making a post on the gear page saying like which is the best way. I want general consensus from everybody else, and it's like who cares,
Yeah, you don't need a
right? Like
validation. Yeah, just do what you
what do
like.
you need somebody
Yeah.
else's validation for, right?
Mhm.
Like if you saw X great player sit in front of you who like the secret is so many great players don't pay attention to any of that nonsense. They just kind of figure it out for themselves.
Mhm.
um and you ask some of these guys like why are you doing it this way, they'll be like I don't know, like I just mixed and matched until I decided it was cool, right?
Right.
um
Yeah.
and that's how they find like their voice and their sound, is because they're like actually trying it. They're not like worried about what the world says is the most important thing or the way to do it.
Yeah, man. It's tough because there's a lot of signal chain chat out there, and I think I've put stuff like I had my Univibe with like my modulation stuff for a while, like further down in the chain.
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
And like what's weird is when I tried to put it in the front, I noticed how much more throbby it was. I was like, oh, okay.
Like
Like,
it's really awesome, like first.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, you're worried that like the interaction with the fuzz might not work, but like I've never run into a time where it doesn't.
Yeah.
So like to me, I'm like, ah, works. Okay. Like,
No, dude,
yeah,
Aaron, I didn't even know, like, maybe, like, 6, 7 years ago is when I found out you can't put a buffer in front of a fuzz. That was in my
you
30s.
but it's the same thing, right?
Yeah,
You can,
yeah, right.
right? Like,
I was getting that squealing sound, and I was on a gig, and I was setting up, and I had a friend who was playing on the gig. He's playing bass. Actually, you guys might have seen him, Brian Ewald, the guy that does all the PRS demos for the PRS website. He was playing bass with me on a gig. And I was like, why is that happening? He's like, do you have your tuner in front of that fuzz? And I was like, yeah. He's like, try swapping it and see what happens. And I moved it and it went away. And he was like, yeah, usually buffers don't like to be like fuzzes don't like buffers in front of them, but sometimes it's okay.
yeah,
And I was like, all right, so note to self, never do that again. Like, because like in between, it was like that thing you were talking about. In between every note, it was that woo, like, and I was like, what's going on? Like, I don't understand this. It sounds great when I'm playing.
yeah.
Like, so, but you're right. It doesn't matter. I mean, you can just experiment and have fun. That's the point. So, um, you know what? I want to pop some people up here. People are coming in saying hello. So here we go. Well said, Aaron. I think people were responding to your idea about the whole thing with like, if you and Curtis did like a pedal where you could adjust the
Oh yeah.
bias settings clicking through
Uh,
and all that stuff.
Me and Curtis got something coming. So
Really?
yeah, oh yeah.
Oh shit, dude. That's gonna be
We
awesome.
got something so awesome coming. Like it is gonna Mark, I'll show you when this is done.
Okay, okay. There's Will. Will stopped in to say hello. Um, so I wanted to ask you, we talked about this a little bit beforehand, but I feel like for me as a guitarist who gets to play in these little bars in Baltimore or whatever, I'm generally in the corner with my band and I can't turn up that loud and blah blah blah. I can't get it to do what it can do in this room. Like
Yeah.
when I crank up the 2-rock, I cannot get it to like really juice and get it pumping. And sometimes I'm like super bummed because I'm like, people aren't hearing the majesty of this thing right now. Like, what do you suggest for people that need to be playing at lower volumes? Because we all can't crank, like you said, a plexi and roll everything
Yeah.
up to 10 on a gig. How do mere mortals harness great sounds at lower volumes? And granted, I guess there's attenuators and things like that, but like what would you do, if you really wanted to get the majesty of your pedal popping out?
Yeah, okay. It's a really interesting question. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, right? Like I'll be the first to say that 412 Marshall Plexi cranked, you can't mimic it.
Mhm.
Like it's not just the loudness of the amp and the amp compressing and sort of distorting, but like I'm a firm believer that like the speakers moving the air and the way that it affects like the sound pressure in the room and the way that your ears perceive that makes a huge, huge, huge difference. Um, so like, a 412 Marshall Plexi that's roaring, that's, louder than hell. If you take a fuzz and you slam the front end of that, eh, you'll feel it in your bones. Like your whole body will feel that sound caving in. Um, and like that's an incredible experience to sort of to have in person. But obviously, like people can't get that normally. And like attenuators are awesome. I use an attenuator. I got a bunch of 40-watt amps in my basement. Then, I'm running high powered speakers and stuff like that. So like, oftentimes you can't really crank the amp to the point that it isn't like is affecting the sound pressure in the room.
Mhm.
Um, Although, like, I'm fortunate, I have like a 60-foot patch cable that I made, and I will literally just go upstairs. um,
That's great.
but like an attenuator can help. But again, like as you drop the volume of the amp, you're reducing the sound pressure and the amount of air that the speakers are moving.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, as you dull that down, you kind of have to try to find a way to make up for it in most cases, right? And to me, the best way to do that is to run an overdrive after the fuzz. Um, Now you can, do one of these things where when you turn the fuzz on, you turn the overdrive on at the same time, um, or you can find some sort of like good, I hate to use the word transparent type overdrive that you can just run all the time to kind of help cop that feel of the amp that's really cranked and pushed. And
Mm.
it's as much like a compression thing as it is the actual sound of it. Like it's a feel thing. Like you're trying to take an amp that then has extra headroom and you're really trying to limit it and feel like it's compressed and it's responding to the way that you play. And like there's a million awesome ones, but like I can ramble off a couple. Like King Tone Blues Power is awesome for that. Um, like a Timmy or any of that type of variant is often, I mean, Blues Power, same vibe. Um, some sort of like Blues Breaker, Morning Glory type thing. Anything that just kind of takes your amp and just adds a little bit of that bigness, a little bit of that compression, and just makes it feel a little bit bigger. Now, it will never sound as huge as throwing all sorts of sound into the room. Um, Given that, like, you're restricting the amount of volume coming out of a speaker and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, so if you were sitting in your basement, you just kind of have to realize what's happening. Um, but that's not to say that live it can't sound incredible. And like case in point, um, we saw Ariel Posen play here a couple weeks ago in a like really small club, like
Mhm.
100 people, um,
Crazy.
and it was it sounded absolutely phenomenal. And like again, like the band is amazing, the players are amazing, like everything about it is amazing. So like, but sitting in the room, it sounded so huge and so big, and like the fuzz tones was just like I was sitting with Terry, and like as soon as he went into using any fuzz, it was like immediate stank face on like everybody in the audience, and like it was still like sitting there. I had no earplugs, no nothing, and like I wasn't feeling like I was being absolutely assaulted by the sound. Um, and he's using his little two rock amp that he takes on tour. Um, but the PA really has a big play in it at that
Mm.
point, right? As in, like, I'm sure if it was just that amp in the room, it would sound a little bit boxy and a little bit, small amp combo amplifier sound. But as soon as he, like, that you mic that combo and you throw it around the room, it's more about the sound being kind of like thrown out and around you as it is the like super huge volume of it, right? Because like that amp or even the sound in the room wasn't overbearingly loud, but it kind of being thrown everywhere gave it that like bigness that I think a lot of people when they plug into a Blues Junior that they've got on volume 3 that it's shrill, it doesn't have that big exploding amp sound that they're looking for.
Mhm.
Um, and that's a big thing too. A lot of guys play like Fender style amps and stuff that can be kind of bright. And the thing to remember, like any of those amps with like bright caps and whatnot, is like the bright cap starts kind of like disappearing as you crank the amp. And not to harp on it, but like sound pressure, I play an amp like it's very bright. Um, and as you bring up the level of the amp and it starts pushing more air, it's almost like that sound pressure kind of makes up for the lack of bass and it kind of drowns out some of the like treble frequencies.
Mm.
Um, and that's when you get into this space of like, it's going to be awesome now, right? Because like it's really, throwing that sound out nicely. Um, but if you find that the fuzz is harsh, like a Doyle Bramhall thing, I mean, although he's playing loud amps anyway, but
Right.
if you find it's a Zonk machine, original Zonk, I actually have over there the Zonk machine that Doyle Bramhall recorded Rich Man with. Like it's sitting right over there.
The
Um,
one that he actually used in the
the
session?
very one, yes. The one that's on the
What?
record. It's sitting in that box over there.
How the heck
Um,
did that happen?
I have great friends. So
Oh,
like,
holy shit.
yeah, I'll get it out maybe later. But like, that is a very, very bright pedal, right? Like it has a very small input cap. It's very pointy. Um, so taking an overdrive and kind of like taming it down, adding some of that extra compression just gives you what you're actually looking for in lieu of being able to really, you know, crank a big amp.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, let's do that real quick. So so Aaron released, when did the Faceless Fuzz come out? It's only been out for like, it's less than a year, right?
Oh yeah. I'd venture to say maybe 6 months. I don't know, something like that.
And then
Not that long.
I remember you telling me like you feel like you're like most proud of how this circuit came together. Um, and I feel like everything that you've done, I think, sounds amazing from everything that I've heard. But like, I think you're starting to be like, okay, now I know what my ears are hearing almost like, and maybe going for that more than anything. Is that kind of accurate or?
It's such a funny thing. Like the Faceless Fuzz was such like it was as much of a journey as it was like a project because like I mean I'd made like plenty of fuzz faces before that. Um, and it was really me being like, again, this is not my primary gig or anything like that, right? And so like I'm not beholden to sell a bunch of pedals. I can take my time and decide to do whatever it is that I want to do. And like there was a pretty big gap in between some stuff that I did in the Faceless Fuzz. And I really went on this journey of like, okay, I've made a whole ton of fuzzes and I know what does what and I know how to experiment with them and I kind of know what I like, but like, how do I how do I really take things to the next level? Like, how do I make this as good as I possibly can? And how deep do I have to go to like experiment with like different parts and different this and that to really come up with something that I feel is it will inevitably be my own, but like it's not like I set out to be like, I have to make this different. I think that's a mistake a lot of builders make is that they feel like they have to put a thumbprint on something. And so they like, I'll text with friends that are other builders sometimes and they'll message me and they'll be like, man, I built a standard stock fuzz face the other day. And they're like, man, it sounds good. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, if you take the time and put the right parts together, it's like, it's not like they were idiots when they were making it back in the day. Like, it, it's an established circuit for a reason. Like it doesn't
Right.
necessarily need over amounts of tweaking. It just needs dedicated time to like put it together. Um, and so the Faceless to me was like it was just me trying to like be obsessive compulsive about every part of it, right? So like I wanted to fix the like I wanted to make a really robust PCB that was like as noise free as I possibly could and stuff. So I had to learn how to use CAD and design the PCB myself. And so like,
Mm.
because I had some assistance with some of the old stuff because I was like, I don't know how to do this. Um, and so like, it took me months of time experimenting and like ordering PCBs and having them go wrong and try again, and learn the software and learn how to get the production. And then like uh, every stupid thing on that pedal is like if anyone has one, when you look at it, everything is a conscious choice. Like the foam pad that holds the battery in to make sure that the battery doesn't rock around, the specific battery snap, the like protective plastic that goes on the battery snap if you're using a power supply to make sure it doesn't ground out, the like way that the design, like I have an original, like, my baby old original fuzz face, and like the design on the Faceless Fuzz is very much trying to like pay homage to this, in that
Mhm.
like it's got a black sort of bottom with Dominion Electric written on it. It's got some like deliberate wear in the screen print to look like an old beat up fuzz face. Like it's just uh, I try to just be like, how long do I have to work on this circuit until I'm completely satisfied with it? As in, like, I will play this myself. Because, like, as a builder, I don't know if other builders have the same feeling that I do, but like, even if you're like well established at building something, you almost like have this apprehension to like use your own stuff.
Ah,
You
yeah,
almost
I
like
can
want to go
understand
out and
that.
like use somebody else's, and like you're almost like you're almost too invested in it, that like you almost feel like you prefer somebody else's because it's something new and it's fresh. It's not like what you hear all the time.
Mhm.
Um, and so Faceless to me was like, what do I love? What do I need to have in this? How do I put it together in a way that to me is just like, I can now put the fuzz face on a shelf and be
Right.
like, I'm done messing with this. This is what I think is the best for me.
Mhm.
If other people dig it, awesome. I can now like eventually, and I have started like exploring other things, right? So that I can
Yeah.
eventually like expand, because I don't necessarily want to be just a
Fuzzface guy?
like I'm a guy that makes one circuit right now, right? Like it's kind of
But you
just
do
like,
it so well, dude, and I think that's the thing is I would say you won't say this about yourself because you don't gloat, but, like, you've put in a lot of hours in the past few years to really kinda get to where it is now, and I think you started off already at a high point, so, like, where it is now is I think that's normal. I think, like, any artist, any person that's, like, on the prowl or seeking for this thing that it's like a carrot that's just dangling that you're like you constantly see it, but you're like,
exactly.
"I'm almost there, I'm almost there." And then now I feel like that makes sense to me that you're like, "I think I'm good. I think I got something here," you know?
It's like very much it's very much self-discovery, right? Like it's one of those things of like, think of somebody who's like playing a sport, and it's like, I'm the type of personality that plays a sport. I'm like determined to like constantly get better. I'm never satisfied. Like I'm never the person that's like, I'm gonna go out and like I play a lot of golf, right? And I run into trouble where it's like I'm never gonna be the guy that can just go out and just play, and my game is my game, and whatever it is whatever it is, and I'm totally happy with that. Like I'm cursed with the endless pursuit of perfection, right? It can always be better. It can always be better. Like um and so like it was kind of trying to find that spot of, I think this is good, right? Like I
Yeah.
think this is what it needs to be. I'm super happy with it. Like I don't think there's anything that I would change. They're all a little bit different. A lot of people don't know that, but like each individual variant, whether it be germanium, the different transistor types, etc.,
Mhm.
every individual PCB is like tweaked for the transistor set that's inside of it.
That's so
So
cool.
it's not just the same circuit with different transistors popped in it. Like they are all subtly a little bit different, because I've like every time I release a new transistor set, I've like manipulated it to be like, I've finely tuned this engine to be working with these parts.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. It's like you're like, you're Willy Wonka. You're like, it's like you're like a baker, and every ingredient like leans on each other, right? So your
Totally.
attention to detail with this stuff, I think, is what sets you apart, in terms of, a boutique builder. Because like anyone could be just cranking out the same thing over and over, but like you're like, when you're sitting down to build, you're like, okay, this is this specific transistor. I got to tune this to this specific pedal for this person, so they're going to enjoy it, and that's pretty awesome.
And like, again, like we stand on the shoulders of giants that came before us, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm the first person to give credit to like an Analog Mike or Dave Fox or any of these people that have like they've come to the game way before us and have done amazing things and like have paved the way for all of us to kind of also jump in the pool with them, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it, it's I have a massive notebook of like every fuzz face variant that I've had from I don't know 50 plus different builders, and it's always like what is their recipe,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like a giant cookbook of everybody's recipe, and so like and it's me trying to be like, why are they doing that? Like, oh, they obviously like this, and so
Mm-hmm.
they've tweaked it towards their ear, and so it's like this cool log of like if somebody messages me and is like, I'm thinking about buying a Faceless Fuzz or whatever, I have this pedal that I really like. The chances are that I've played it and I'm like, okay, I understand like what that builder likes and what they do. So like you probably want to move in this direction.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's just it's just the extra mile, that you're going. And I think that's the kind of personalized attention that you give to all these guitar players who are looking to get into your stuff. And you know what? Another dude that you should get to know my buddy James from Rewind, if you guys already don't know each other, because James is the same way with his pickups.
Yeah,
Like
cool.
he is just a mad scientist. He did this funny video. You should go follow him on Instagram. He did this funny video with James. What was that? If you're still here in the chat, he had like a Ross delay pedal, and he like opened it up and was like inside of it, and he was like, "They say don't mess with these parameters, but I'm gonna." He's like, and he went in and messed with it, and he got it to do all this crazy oscillating stuff. So he's like the kind of person like you. It's like we'll go there and like tweak things and like mess with stuff to see what happens.
Yeah, you almost have to
So,
break it to figure out why, right? Like
yeah. I think you guys would get along. Well, I have my guitar plugged in. So here is the Faceless Fuzz, all the way up. I'm gonna go on the bridge pickup. Let me go on the neck. And I'm gonna slowly roll it back. That is about 6 right there. Go back a little bit more. And if I crank it up, and that's coming through this. So I don't have a mic on the amp. So just imagine in the room, it feels great, like both ways. When you clean it up, man, it has the prettiest. I mean, it's on.
totally. And that's super important to me.
It's just
I'm a guy that like leaves it on a lot.
yeah.
And so it's super important to me that you have that kind of interaction. And the fun thing is too, is that like talking about trying to simulate that sound of like the cranked amp
Mm-hmm.
is like the fuzz face on, but rolled back on your guitar can kind of simulate the sound of an amp that's like cooking a little bit more than it actually is.
Yeah. And even when I add, like if I put the Duelist on, even if I add that and I keep it rolled back, it would be a good like chunky drive sound.
That's the sound.
And like that's a fuzz and an overdrive together. And then that's like the thing that I love about what Doyle does, because like this doesn't, it's not even like it's crazy loud in the room, and it doesn't feel mushy. Like sometimes
Yeah,
the articulation of each individual note, like if you stack certain overdrives, it gets a little dark. Like that's the blues breaker side, but the TS side actually, Aaron, I was playing with that earlier today, and has a nice. It screams, dude.
that's a sound for me. Like that's
Right. Yeah. I mean, that point blank, that's what you do. Like when you're on stage, because it does feel good under your fingers. Each individual note, I feel like it isn't scared to come out. Whereas
totally
sometimes I feel like if you get on stage and if I kick a fuzz on, the notes like shy away. Like it's like it gets lost in the mix. It gets lost in the frequency range of what's going on the stage. It's just not, some people don't understand how to tame a fuzz to make it work on the bandstand, I guess, is my main
totally.
point.
And like and to be fair, like without giving secrets away or anything, like the Faceless Fuzz in particular is like it's tweaked a little bit. It's tweaked to like minuscule amounts that most people probably don't really hear it, but there's just that little bit of extra like clarity and stuff that's kind of thrown into it. So it still gives you the big like bombastic fuzz face thing, but it's just that, to me anyway, it's just that smidge more polite than the big farty overblown
That's the perfect
thing.
adjective.
And it really works well for guys that are like trying to play in like power trios and stuff like that, because it like still has just that right amount of cut.
Mm-hmm.
Um, while still having the like exploding type sound. It was really important to me, right? Like again, it's all trying to like fine tune. I think about it like having a like you're bowling and you're putting the bumpers up, right? I'm trying to be like, how do I stay within this lane properly, right? Like I
Yeah.
don't want too much of one side, I don't want too much of the other. I want just all the sweet stuff in between.
Yeah. Man, it just sounds so great. When I plugged into it, and Aaron knows I'm a super big Marvel nerd, so the one that I have, he made with like Deadpool colorway, which I super appreciate. And like
I love it.
it looks awesome, dude. And I think like when I got that and I had a rehearsal, somebody saw it and I put the little knobs like you did when you shipped it, so it looks like those eyes on the logo, and they're like, "Hold on a second," and I was like, "Yep, it's exactly what you exactly what you think it is." So it's like Aaron just goes the extra mile. So James is saying it was a 1973 Ross R80. James, you guys got to talk. You should talk in Instagram. I think you guys would really get along because you're both nerds. Max is in here. Hello, Max.
Hey Max.
Got some people. Oh, look who's in here now. Hello. I talked to him yesterday. I was like, "Hey, do you want to sneak in and join the stream halfway through and surprise Aaron?" He's like, "I got babies. I can't. Got to pick the kids up." I'm like, that's fair. All right. So I wanted to ask you, how much time do we have? All right, we got a couple minutes before we do the lightning round. I also want to like talk to you about like how much has changed since last time we talked, because you do have fuzzes on the boards of a lot of pretty amazing players right now.
Yeah, like it's ridiculous. Again, man, like I never would have seen stuff like that happening. I don't really talk about it, to be fair.
That's
Like
why I'm bringing it up, because you're too humble. But I'm gonna
I don't
brag.
really, and it's the first thing I say when I talk to some of these guys is I'm like, man, get the pedal, try it. If you dig it, awesome. Like if you want to give me a shout out, cool. But like I want to be clear, like this is not about like publicity or anything like that. It's really first and foremost about how do I get you a pedal that you dig. And so like I kind of like leave it up to them, right? I've been crazy fortunate. Like it doesn't. My guitar heroes are in my cell phone Rolodex, right? Like
Right.
it's a strange thing. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Like just
Well,
it,
let me list them. So I know Philip Sace has used your stuff.
yeah,
Ariel Posen,
Yeah, recently.
Yeah. Joey Landreth, didn't he have one?
Yeah, he has one for sure.
Okay. Well,
He has more than one.
Nick S. I always forget how to pronounce his last name.
Sevigny.
Yes, yeah. He's got one.
He's my boy.
Yeah, he's awesome. Who else?
Jared James Nichols has
Oh,
played
yeah.
Zapata from Gary Clark Jr. Band actually played one on Fallon, which was kind of cool.
That's dope.
Trying to think of who else. Like recently, like Instagram, Matthew Scott just got one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I don't know, like Mark Hopkins.
Hey, I'm a nerd. No, I think
Oh, JD Simo. I
oh,
forget.
yeah.
I forget all the names. Like,
So you get the point. The people that are playing and doing it dig air and stuff. So then you should buy one because they're pretty awesome. I will also say, as far as you're pretty. I mean, you're talk about small business. You are a it's you. So
like to give credit to my partner, like
mhm,
she helps me immensely. Because to be fair, like I can't keep up by myself these days. So there's
yeah,
a lot of stuff that like I don't want to do that's kind of like tedious that she's been amazing. Like she preps all the enclosures and
that's awesome.
prepares stuff for me and deals with shipping and things like that. Like just stuff that I can then like line up. I try to build them I build like 14 of them at a time on a big PCB rack.
Yeah,
Um, and building 14 of them, like no transistors, like just the infrastructure, so to speak, for the pedal takes probably about, I don't know, it takes maybe 3 hours worth of time to like put it all together and get them all ready. And then like I have to audition transistors. So I have a special little case that has like individual spots that like when I find time to sit down and say this afternoon I'm going to play test and pick transistors, and when I pick a pair that I'm like I like this pair, that pair like goes like into a little space that I'm like, okay, that's pair is ready to then get dropped into one of these other circuits. Like it's so incredibly time consuming. Like I wish it was fast, but it's really not.
yeah. Yeah, which is, when people think about when you're paying for a small business pedal, there's a lot of sweat equity in that pedal. But also, again, big shout out to partners because partners are what keep us going.
Totally.
and dude, my wife, like 2 weeks ago, was like, "What? You got to get all of your podcasts on streaming platforms." That was her that pushed me to do all this, and I got 169 episodes uploaded in the course of like 3 days. Friday night, I stayed up until 2:30 in the morning just watching Curb Your Enthusiasm, just getting them uploaded, getting them uploaded.
Can you not like batch upload them?
No, I had to do them one at a time.
All the descriptions, everything. Oh no.
Well, so the descriptions I just pulled from what I already had listed, so that was easy.
Yeah.
But it just downloading like the video file, dropping it in Final Cut, dropping the audio from that to my desktop, dropping that into the program that then uploads it to Spotify. So like 169 of those. And I wouldn't have done it if my wife didn't put a fire into my ass. So
Yeah,
I
totally.
have to give a huge shout out. We all do, all the people who support us. I mean, regardless who it is, it's a huge help. I get it.
Totally.
All right. And I think that's all the questions I have for you right now. I mean, what do we have coming up? So right now, the Faceless Fuzz is out there. People can buy them through Instagram mostly, right?
Yeah, there's the website dominionelectric.co.
Right.
Um, that's the main site where you can grab stuff. The big thing with the Faceless Fuzz that I tried to do was that when I was building originally, I can only build what I build, and then I was dropping them in batches, and it was one of those like, there's 10 available now, and if you get one, awesome, and if you don't get one, too bad, so sad. You'll just have to wait. Um, what I tried to do, so we'll talk like something I tried to do with the Faceless Fuzz was like I managed to source enough like germaniums and silicons or whatever to basically have them up on the website at all times. And it's like if you want one, you can just go order one and I'll build it and then you can get it. And then interdispersed amongst those, when I get my hands on some rare stuff, I build sort of special ones. And I say special as in like they're only special in that they're using a different part that's not something that I have in a large enough quantity that I can just make regularly. But at least somebody, if they want one, they can just go buy one, right? Like they don't have to
Yeah.
play this waitlist game or whatever. It was really important to me to make sure that anybody that wanted a pedal could get one. So I have that. I've been working really hard on a Zonk type variant. Um, it's not a clone of that Doyle Zonk per se, like a true Mark One Zonk. And people have asked me forever to do those, and the challenge that exists with those is like a Mark One type Zonk requires a whole different host of parts
Right.
that I don't have, right? Like it's one of those things of like I have a whole ton of like 22 microfarad, you know, capacitors, and if I need a 44 or 47 microfarad one for the Zonk machine, I'd have to get those. And it's like when you start playing this source old parts game, you have what you have, and then in order to
Yeah.
do something else, you might need to source more. And I don't know how much I want to like, I always already spend so much time like trying to find stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but all that to say is like I've been working off of the like Zonk 2 pedal, which is something like Reeves Electro Zoe is kind of based on that, and some other things. Um, I've been working on that to try to put my own spin on it. The cool thing about the Zonk 2 is it still has more of that interaction that the fuzz face has with your guitar volume.
Oh, okay.
Um, and so the idea that I don't want to release anything that's just a clone that, I mean, the Faceless Fuzz, the fuzz face. But what I mean is like,
Yeah,
I
but
want
come
to
on.
feel like I bring something to the table. Like I don't want to feel like, hey, it's just another thing. Um, and the Zonk type that I'm working on, the intention there is to try and have Faceless Fuzz, like big fuzz face type variant, whatever I'm gonna call the other thing. I haven't figured it out yet. A little bit more like focused, a little bit more humbucker, maybe tailored, a little bit more
Ooh,
raunchy. And so that you kind of have the smooth fuzz face and the kind of like raunchy aggressive. So you'll have one of each. That's the idea, is you can kind of pick from two different sides of the spectrum.
that's dope, dude. That sounds fun.
I'm working on it. Like hopefully in the next couple months, I'll be able to send out some prototypes so people can give it a try and see what people think.
Yeah.
Um, and I've got an Octavia in that I scored an original Tycho Brahe Octavia like a while back.
Dang.
Man, it's awesome. Like, and so like I've gone on this epic journey of make it sound gross. Exactly. Like
Yeah.
that's the point. It's got to be disgusting. Like, um, but yeah, like Octavia is kind of in the works as well because it's kind of like part of the main food groups
Yeah.
for me. And like I said, we have a friggin' amazing collab coming up sometime shortly. I think we're
Ugh,
gonna do a raffle or something with Mason Effects. It's ridiculous.
that's
I'm
awesome.
so excited about it.
That's really cool. Mason is also a lovely human being. So when you get two good people working on something, what can go wrong, you know? Um, all right, man. Well, let me pop this open. Let's do the lightning round get down because I got to get to Pearl Jam, man. I got to go
Oh
to
man,
the
you must be so excited.
dude. I am. Oh, you don't even know. I almost called out of work today because I was like, how am I going to be able to sit here all day and work? Um, but yeah, we're going to my buddy and I are going. There's a movie theater and they're playing the whole Pearl Jam album twice. First time it's in complete darkness.
No way.
Second time it's like with visualizers and stuff. So yeah, I'm super pumped. All right, I heard it's really good too, man. I heard it's like feels like old school Pearl Jam. All right, so we're doing a special lightning round get down. We're gonna do a movie buff based lightning round get down. So same thing, same concept, but you know the drill. All right, first question: Michael Keaton or Christian Bale Batman?
Oh, Michael Keaton.
Okay.
I love Christian Bale. I love the Christian Bale Batman movies. Um, but I absolutely love Michael Keaton everything.
Yeah,
He is Batman to me.
yeah, me too. Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones?
Lord of the Rings.
Back to the Future 1 or Back to the Future 2?
That's really difficult. Like it's probably like top two favorite movies of mine ever.
Mm,
Um, like that that series. And like obviously the first one is the best. But I don't think Back to the Future 2 gets enough credit. Back to the Future 2 is amazing.
Yeah.
When you really start diving into it and you start realizing all the nuance that's like gone into the second one and all how like things, change when he goes into the different time periods and whatnot, like I feel like you can watch Back to the Future 2 like over and over and over again, and you just pick up on new stuff every time you watch it. It's underrated.
Yeah. Plus hashtag hoverboards, dude. Come on,
Totally.
man. Tobey Maguire or Tom Holland Spider-Man?
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, right. You know what's funny, man? Is his movies, I didn't love them when I saw them the first time around. And then when that last Spider-Man came out, the last Tom Holland movie, I was like, man, he's pretty good. Like he does a good job. All right, cool. Episode Star Wars. Episode 1 through 3 or episode 7 to 9?
7 to 9, I guess.
Okay.
I totally dislike the whatever 2000s ones.
Yeah, they're not that great. It's sad. Although, man, they could have.
What are you doing? Like, you spend way too much time in like intergalactic politics.
Right? Yeah, it was. It did feel that way. It was like Matlock in space almost.
Totally.
In a way. Jurassic Park or Jurassic World?
Oh, Jurassic Park, the first one. Like, it's one of the best movies ever. Come on.
Yeah. Ghostbusters 1 or Ghostbusters 2?
Oh my God. Like, my other favorite movie of all time. Again, it's obviously Ghostbusters 1. It's the movie. But again, I think Ghostbusters 2 like doesn't get enough credit.
It's super fun.
Dude, I personally think that the scene in the courtroom with the Scoleri brothers is like the best scene in any Ghostbusters movie.
Yeah.
I'll go out and say that. Like, it just has everything. It's got the like comedic flair. It's got the action. It's got, I don't know. I love them both.
Yeah. Did you see Frozen Empire?
I did see Frozen Empire.
What did you think? We just saw it this past weekend.
So like, I thought it was good. I was really worried. Like, I was nervous going in. I was like, man, please, like, don't ruin this. Because I kind of liked the vibe of Afterlife.
I thought that was a fun movie.
My issue with Afterlife was like, you didn't have to go back to all the same old stuff.
I agree.
And I feel like they kept shoehorning in small things within that. Like when she goes out and she like tests the proton pack and they like fire it against the car. Like, just leave it at that. Like, you don't need to like all of a sudden be like, oh wait, there's like a ghost. We've got to go take care of it. Like, you're trying to capture the nostalgia of somebody like me that grew up with that. And like, if I was a kid and I found the pack and I blew up a car messing with it, like, it would stop there. Like, he finds the old car and he takes it for a joyride. You don't need to then parlay that into like taking care of some ghosts. Like, if I picture myself as a young kid being able to take the Ecto 1 for a drive, like that would have made my life, right? Like, so I don't know. I feel like they just whatever. But Frozen Empire was good.
It was entertaining. There was a lot of fan service.
I feel like they tried to cram too much into it. Like, there was a lot of extra that didn't need to be there. I feel like it could have been excellent, but kind of wasn't. But as a quick aside, I love Ghostbusters. It's my entire childhood. And as much as I had always wanted a new Ghostbusters to come, I hate to admit this, but like, I honestly think that Stranger Things did it for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, it had that 80s nostalgia. It had the 80s music. It had the kind of sci-fi comedic thing. Like, when that came along, I almost was like, man, you know what? Like, the hunger that I have for more Ghostbusters has been satisfied with this while doing something different.
That's very interesting. I would agree with you. I think that there was a pretty that show has a pretty big impact, and I'm really curious to see how they're gonna like finish it this next season. It's gonna be interesting how they attack this. All right, cool. Deadpool 1 or Deadpool 2?
Deadpool 1, maybe? I don't know. 2 I thought was fun.
Mhm.
But 1 probably.
Okay. Kill Bill 1 or 2?
Uh, I think Kill Bill 2 is the better one.
Yeah.
I think it's got all the background and all the well, Kill Bill 1 has the Tarantino kind of like action stuff going on, and like I'm a huge Tarantino fan. I feel like Kill Bill 2 taps a little bit more into like what he's best known for, which is kind of like that extended dialogue. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, I remember seeing that in the theater when it came out, and everybody was kind of like let down because they wanted like more of the same. But I remember being one of the only ones of my friends being like, no, I was super satisfied with that. Like,
Me too. You know, it's funny, I was in a meeting with my boss today, like a one-on-one, and we were talking about something about, because my daughter just started playing softball, and he was a pitcher. So I was asking him questions about how to teach her how to throw harder and stuff. And he was talking about something laying on his back and throwing the ball up and getting the spin on the ball and stuff without having a lot of room to crank it. And
yeah,
I was like, yeah, like the 1-inch punch. So like
totally.
we had a whole Kill Bill moment today. All right, here's the last one. What is a movie that you snuck by your parents that you watched when you were a kid that you weren't supposed to watch that you still love to this day?
Oh my god, Basic Instinct.
Okay, that makes 100% sense. Yeah. All right. Oh my god, that's so great, dude. Yeah, there's so many things. Like, there's no more like DVD stores. There's no more like Blockbuster or anything anymore. But like going to the movie store and like getting something that you obviously weren't ready to watch, like a rated R flick, and you walk up to the counter, felt like you were like a kid, like 20 years old walking into the liquor store.
I had a friend whose parents were like super cool, and like we like whatever we wanted to watch, they were kind of like my parents were very like, oh, like I don't know about stuff, and so like I'm a huge horror movie fanatic, and that started with like a friend of mine where it was like, I swear it was religion. It was like every Friday sleepover to the movie store.
That's awesome.
Like, what can we watch that is apparently like just not for us, uh,
Yeah.
right? And all the like Nightmare on Elm Street and all that stuff started then.
Dude, I still have nightmares about some of those movies, seeing some of that stuff when I was a kid, but I miss those days. Like, we need to bring back, like, friends sleepovers where you can, like, watch, like, movies just to
Totally, it was
have
the
some
best.
drinks. Don't drive home, just have some drinks, you can crash on the couch or watch a couple movies. That was the best, man, in high
Totally.
school, every weekend. Ah, well, alright, so let me pop this up here again. Everybody head on over there. Aaron's got some cool merch. He's wearing it right now as well. So buy a sweatshirt, buy a t-shirt, do whatever you can to support this man. He's doing some amazing stuff. And I feel like my life is better having you in it, my friend.
Thank
Um,
you. You as well.
anything else to say, or so we're good, right? We got the Faceless Fuzz is up there. Aaron's got some stuff cooking in the oven right now. So keep your eyes peeled on Instagram. It's just Dominion Electric on Instagram, right?
Just Dominion Electric. That's what I got. Yep.
Cool. Well, everybody, that's it for us. Thank you for hanging out. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And we'll see you next time.